Hi everyone, welcome back. So I've got my first update for my pan in every eyeshadow palette challenge that I've set myself this year. And I set myself this challenge because I've got quite a few eyeshadows within my collection and I'd only hit pan on one of them. And for me, that didn't sit too well. I want to hit more pans in a lot more of my eyeshadow. So I thought, let's put myself on this challenge for this year and see, hello cat, and see how many eyeshadows I can hit pan in. Sorry, he's doing that typical cat thing where he wants every door in the house open. So I film right here next to a wardrobe and I keep the door closed. And he comes in and moans to have the wardrobe door open. I open it and he goes, nah, and walks off. Any cat owners out there can probably relate to that. So anyway, back to the update on this new challenge I set for myself. So guys, I am off to a flying start. I have hit pan in 4 eyeshadows and there were only 8 eyeshadows at the start of this challenge, so the fact that I've hit pan in half of them so far is so good. I am so happy with my progress so far. So let's start talking you through all of the shades that I'm focusing on, the ones that I've hit pan in, and then the new shades that I'm rotating into the challenge. Okay, first shade is actually the first shade that I hit pan on, and this is my Urban Decay Naked Heat palette, and I was working on hitting pan in the shade Chaser, this one here, and I have hit pan on it. I hit pan on the 7th of January, so just a week into the challenge and I hit pan, and it only took me 5 uses to hit pan. And I did say that in my intro video, I did say that although I've only hit pan in one of my eyeshadows, there are a lot of shadows that have really big dips in them and I'm not that far off from hitting pan, and this was one of them. So the fact that it only took me 5 uses to hit pan in this just goes to show that if I use my shadows a little bit more, then I would hit pan in a lot more of them. So very exciting that I've hit pan in that one. This is a matte ivory shade, so it is such a versatile shade that I can use regardless of whatever makeup look that I'm wearing. So for example, for today, although I'm a little bit pinky, I have set my eyeshadow base with a matte ivory shade and then I can just leave it there. But obviously today I've gone on top with some other colours, so a shade that I can get so much use out of. So yeah, it didn't surprise me that it didn't take me very long at all to hit pan on. So the next shade in this palette that I'm going to work on is the next shadow that I've got really good progress on. I've got a really good dip in it and it's the one next to it, and it's in the shade Ounce, which is a shimmery ivory shade. Now I do have a similar shade to this that I'm working on hitting pan on, which is Golden Girl in a Laura Geller palette, but that one is very yellow. This one is a lot more subtle, it's more ivory. This one works a lot better as that inner corner highlight shade, which is what I've done today, and also under the brow bone. So I've used this one 11 times and I included it on the 7th of January on the day that I hit pan in Chaser. So I don't think I'm going to be too far off hitting pan in Ounce. Hopefully by the next update I would have hit pan, and then that would be 2 in this palette. Alright, next shade comes from my Vive Essentials palette, one of my favourite eyeshadow palettes within my collection. It's just so warm and neutral and brown, I love it. And my crease shade comes from this palette, and it's this one here in the shade Buff. And I don't think I've made any visible progress in this at all. It looks, in my mind, the same. Now I am going to put in update pictures, so it might look different in the picture, but looking at it in the pan, yeah, it doesn't look like I've barely even touched it, but I have used it 18 times because it's such a good crease shade. However, the pans are huge. It's going to take me so long to hit pan on this, especially as well because I use a fluffy brush with my crease shade. If I used a flat packer brush, I'd probably end up picking up more product, but because I'm only using a fluffy one, and you don't need a lot of product anyway because these are quite pigmented, it is going to take me quite some time to use this one up, despite the fact that I use it a lot. So don't think I've really seen any progress on this one, so this one is probably going to take a long time for me to hit pan on. Next eyeshadow comes from the other Vive palette. This is the Muse palette, so this is full of pinks and purples, and the shadow that I was working on hitting pan on is the one that I've got really good progress on, or really good, the most progress on in this palette so far, and it's in the shade Regal, which is this sparkly purple here. However, I have decided to change things a little bit with this challenge. So there are 3 shades out of all of the eyeshadows that I'm focusing on that are cool toned, and now that I've discovered I am warm toned, I don't really want to be using cool toned makeup. So what I have decided to do is to replace those cool tone shadows that I'm working on with a warm shade. So I am no longer going to be working on Regal. I only used it 5 times, and that's just because it is quite dark and it is cool toned. So I'm going to replace Regal with Love. Now this is a pink, and as an autumn I don't have many pinks in my colour spectrum, but this is a really muted, earthy, warm pink. So I think I can get away with using this, especially this month, what with it being February and lots of Valentine's makeup. So I think I could get quite a bit of use out of this shade this month. So because it's not a very vibrant, in your face, girly, sparkly, cool toned pink, I think this one is going to be a lot more wearable than Regal. So Love is going to be my focus shade from now on in the Muse palette. And I'm going to do the same thing with the next 2 palettes I'm going to speak about. So the next one is ABH Norvina. So again, full of like pinks and purples, but you do have some neutrals in here as well. And the shade that I was working on was Rose Gold, this one here, because I had quite a good dip going on in it. However, Rose Gold is also cool toned, and to be totally honest with you, I'm not really keen on the shade anyway, despite the fact whether it suits me or not. I think it's quite a dark and dirty rose gold shade. I don't think it's that pretty a shade. Now again, I only used this one 5 times last month, so that is quite telling that I've used the cool tone shades very few times. So the shadow that I'm going to be working on instead of Rose Gold is going to be Summer. So another shimmery shade, but this one is more of that true yellow gold. And it doesn't actually look like I've really touched Summer, so it looks like I'm starting pretty much from scratch with this shade. So it will be interesting to see how long it takes me to hit pan in this. However, the shimmers in this palette are really soft, and I have heard from people who have panned this palette before that the shimmers are the easiest shades to hit pan and it doesn't take that long. So I'm intrigued to see how much progress I can make on Summer this month. And then same thing with ABH Modern Renaissance. I was working on Bonfresco because I had a good dip in this one as well. I used this one slightly more times than the previous 2 shades I've spoken about. I've used this 9 times. However, this is a cool tone purple, and purples in particular, especially if they're cool toned, are not my kind of shades. They just make me look quite tired. My dark circles look more pronounced, my eyes are more sunken. So I'm going to switch out Bonfresco, and I have decided to replace it with Primavera, which I suppose is quite similar to Summer. It's probably not as dark and not as golden. This one is much more of that lighter yellow gold, but I've got a really good dip in this one, and I feel like this is a shade that I can get a lot of use out of. So this is going to be my next focus shade. Okay, so that is it for the cool tone shadows, so the rest should hopefully all be warm toned. Next shade comes from my Nars Isolde Duo, and the cat is back, he wants to get into the wardrobe. No, he's on the windowsill. Anyway, the shade that I was working on in this little duo is this one here on the left hand side. This is the lighter of the 2. This one is much more of that really warm gold. Love this shade in particular, but really love this duo. It's so beautiful. It's lovely for the autumnal months, for Christmas, but then also in the summer as well. Very warm toned, buttery shades, just a pleasure to use. And I think actually when the time comes that I use this duo up, I'll replace it straight away because it's so gorgeous. So yeah, the shade that I was working on was the left hand side one, and this is another one that I've hit pan in. I hit pan on the 26th of the month. It only took me 6 uses, so another shade that I was really close to using up. And the pan in this isn't hugely obvious because it looks like the base of the pan has been, I suppose, sort of stained maybe by the actual shade. The pan in the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette was really obvious, but when I was using this I looked at it and thought, have I hit pan? I'm not sure. So you have got to try and get it in the right light, but there is a pan in it, so yeah, I have hit pan in that one. So that now means that I am working on the other shade in this little duo, so the darker shade. I don't have as much progress on this one because the other one was the one that I used to gravitate towards in the duo, but a beautiful shade as well, and it works really well with the other shadows that I'm working on in this challenge. Oh no, I've just noticed that it's the hinge has come off. Oh no, oh no. Okay, I need to fix that when I'm done filming. Oh, also I forgot to say I hadn't used that right hand side shade at all yet, but hopefully this month I will use it a lot more than zero. Next up is this face and eye palette from Laura Geller, and this is another one that I have hit pan on. I was working on Golden Girl, which is this shimmery yellow shade here, and this was quite a difficult shade to work with because it wasn't pigmented like at all, a very, very sheer eyeshadow, so I actually had to use a lot of it every time that I used it, so I dipped my brush into it so many times, so that really helped in terms of hitting pan on it. And I hit pan on the very last day of the month, hit pan on the 31st of January, and it took me 8 uses to hit pan on it. And I've decided to replace it with this burnished bronze shade. It's called Tantalising Taupe, which is this one here. This one is a lot more pigmented than Golden Girl though, so this one probably won't be as easy to hit pan on it. And I'm starting off pretty near the beginning of this shade. It doesn't look like I've used much of it at all, so this one will probably take quite some time to hit pan on. And I've used that shade Tantalising Taupe twice so far. So one that I've not really used much this month, this is my other Laura Geller face and eye palette. This is in the shade TGI Thursday. The eyeshadow I'm working on is the shade Toasted Taupe, this one here. I've only used it twice, and I've only used it twice because it is a little bit darker, it's more sultry, it's more of like an evening date night type of eyeshadow rather than an everyday one. And it is quite pigmented as well, so you don't need a lot of product. I tend to just apply this with a fluffy brush and get a bit more of like a diffused look. So this is going to be another one that's probably going to take quite some time to hit pan on. A lovely shade, but yeah, it is my least worn. So I just want to talk about a couple of extra shades that I am working on in this challenge. So I did say that once I've hit pan on a shade within a palette, I'll replace it with a different shade in the palette, which is what I have done. But when I hit pan on the shade Chaser, that matte ivory from Urban Decay Naked Heat, I needed like another matte ivory shade to work on. So I thought, well, why don't I just include one of those shades from a different palette and just include that as another pan to be working on as part of this challenge. So what I did is I looked at those matte ivory shades from the rest of my palettes and decided to choose the one that I was very, very close to hitting pan on, or the one that I'd made most progress on at all, which was from my ABH Modern Renaissance palette. And I'm happy to say it's another pan. It is this one here in the shade Tempera, so I have hit pan on this one. I used it 8 times and I included it on the 10th of January, and that pan is pretty big already, so I think if I was to continue focusing on this one it wouldn't take me long to use up at all. So pleased that I've hit pan on a shade in my Modern Renaissance palette, but that still means that I am going to continue working on another shade in this palette, which like I said was Primavera. So I've hit pan on my matte ivory, so I decided to include another matte ivory shade, which is from my Viva Essentials palette. It is this one here called So Shy, and I do have a good dip going on in this, and I use a big wide flat packer brush, so that really helps in getting that nice dip going on. Like I said about Buff, this one here, because I'm using a fluffy brush, it looks like I've made no progress in it, whereas with So Shy I do have this nice dip going on in it, and I included this on the 19th of January and I've used it 12 times. So a shade that I'm using quite a lot, so one that I'm going to get really good numbers of usage on, but not sure when I'm going to hit pan on this one, because like I say, the pans are so big. They could be quite wide but not very deep, or they could just be wide and deep because the pans are quite generous. So we will see with this one. But yeah, hitting pan on ABH Tempera brings me up to a total of 4 pans so far in this challenge. So at the start of the challenge I had a pan percentage of 0.93% because I'd only hit pan in 1 out of my 108 shades. So now that I've hit pan in an additional 4 eyeshadows, that brings my percentage up to 4.63%. So 1 month in, I am really, really pleased with my progress. Now, I'm not expecting this amount of progress every month because the vast majority of shades that I've chosen to hit pan on are the ones that I've got really good progress in so far. I am going to start to slow down in progress, I think, once I start then working on shadows that don't have a lot of progress in to start with. So as much as I would love to hit pan in 4 eyeshadows every month, I don't think that's going to be happening at every single check-in. But it is really nice to have that big success to start off with, because that's really then inspiring and encouraging for me to continue with this, to know that it is working. Because I was also thinking as well, should I just have one eyeshadow palette per month and try to pan on as many shadows in that palette as I can? But actually the way that I've set it up, by just including 1 or 2 shadows in each palette, seems to be working fine. So I'm going to continue with that, and we'll see how much progress I can make in next month's update. So I hope you enjoyed that update. I'm really pleased with it. I'm happy with my progress so far. If you yourself have done a similar challenge to this, a pan in every eyeshadow palette or a pan in every palette, if you've got any tips or tricks, anything that you think might be beneficial in me knowing to have even more progress, please do let me know down below. Please leave me a comment. If you like the video, please do give it a thumbs up. Please also subscribe if you haven't as well. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again very soon for my next one. Bye guys.